Welcome back to another ballistics comparison between a couple of very popular weapons. One is more popular than the other. Today I'm doing a comparison between the 7mm Remington Magnum and the 7mm-08. As you can see here, I have them listed over here. A lot of people compare these. I know I did at the beginning, and for my purposes I ended up choosing the 7mm-08 because of hand loading and cost of reloading, as well as recoil. And you'll see a little bit as I go through this, but let's go ahead and get started. If you want to check out some of my other videos, you can see those. I have done a comparison. I'm just doing a few of the 7mm-08 versus several of the other rifles right now because I own that. I'll continue to do these with other calibers soon. I'm going to do the 7mm Remington Magnum versus the 300 Win Mag soon. That's a popular comparison. And then there's been some others that have been requested in the comments, so I'll do some of those as well. But you can see the 270 compared to the 7mm-08, as well as the 308 versus the 7mm-08 in some of my other videos, so go check those out. Also, please subscribe if you haven't yet. I will be posting at least one of these videos every week for the near future, at least. Probably the next few months I'll be doing this, so there'll be several videos coming out. If you're interested in learning more about the ballistics, please subscribe and check those out. Alright, so let's get down to this comparison here. So I decided to change it up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and start with recoil. So the 7mm Remington Magnum has 19.3 pounds of recoil that's moving at 11.8 feet per second. That's with 139 grain. 140 grain or 150 grain has 19.2. I'm not sure why that's a little bit less. Must be a different bullet. It is traveling backwards faster. And then 160 grain, 2950 has 20.3 pounds of recoil at 12 feet per second. And then the 175 grain has 21.7 at 12.5 feet per second. And now that's a drastic difference between that and the 7mm-08. This is the number one reason people pick the 7mm-08, I would say. If not number one, it is one of the top reasons. 12.1 at with the 120 grain bullet. That's not up here, but you can load that in there. 12.1 pounds of recoil, 10.2 feet per second, and the 140 grain is 12.6. Compare that up to the 139, which is 19.3. So 7 pounds more hitting your shoulder every time you shoot that gun, and that's going to be noticeable. You can notice quite a bit of difference between those. 308 actually is about 15-16 pounds, but the 7mm-08 is fairly light recoil compared to some of the other guns. Alright, let's get down to the ballistics. This is factory ammunition that's available at the stores. 7mm-08, this is new as of January 2017. Actually, I would say December or November. It's within the last couple months. The Hornady 150 grain ELDX Precision Hunter ammo. Here's the ballistics of that. This is all done at 500 yards, like my other video comparisons. At 500 yards, you're going 2,037 feet per second. You have 1,381 foot-pounds of energy, and it drops 43 inches. Let's go down here and compare this. The 7mm Remington Magnum, it is an amazing cartridge, very flat shooting, and has lots of power. This isn't a real comparison because this is 162 grain versus 150 grain, and this is a little bit less efficient, but this is what's available from the store. So this is what you get. You're looking almost 500 foot-pounds of energy more on the Remington Magnum, and it's going a couple hundred feet, 250 feet per second more. Let's go to the SSTs. 139 grains going 2,059 feet per second. 1,308 foot-pounds of energy. Down here, 162 grain, much bigger bullet. 2,219 feet per second. 117.72 foot-pounds of torque. So that's drastically different. One thing I want to point out is these ELDX bullets will penetrate much deeper and perform better than the SSTs. The SSTs tend to fragment when they hit. They're moving really fast and they fragment. So for elk, if you're going to be hunting elk, pick up the ELDXs or some of the Nosler partitions. I wouldn't use the SSTs for elk. You can use them, but you're probably going to be picking out a bunch of bullet scraps from your meat because it will fragment when it hits it. The ELDXs will stay together much better. They'll retain their weight. Okay, GMX performance, 139 grain. 139 grains, pretty much typically the largest bullet you can find for the 7mm-08 from the factory. They do have some 150 grain Nosler partitions you can buy. I didn't have the ballistics for those, so I didn't include those, but 130, 140 grain bullets are pretty common for the 7mm-08. GMX has 26 feet per second, 1267 foot-pounds of energy down here. They actually do have the 139 grain for the Remington Magnum, and it is going 2180 feet per second, has 1467 foot-pounds. So you're exactly 200 foot-pounds more and 180-ish, well, 160 feet per second higher. So, and then Nosler partition up here, 140 grain is going 1935, 1164 foot-pounds. Down here, 21, 22, 1399 foot-pounds. Decent difference there. And then you have the 160 grains available from the factory, which you do not up here. That is 2040 and 1479. Compare that to this guy, and so you can see a big difference there. And then I added the ballistic tips in there. Not 140, they only had 150 grains for the Remington Magnum. But let's go ahead and compare those. 2134 feet per second, 1517 foot-pounds versus 1,000. Oh, I lied. Let's reverse those. 1164. This is the ballistic tip. I don't know why I put it before the partition. 1164, 1935. Yeah, so the 160 grain partition should be more closer to that. The partitions are they're older bullets, and Nosler has replaced those with the AccuBond bullets. They using new technology to keep the AccuBonds together, and they want the penetration is supposed to be similar, but I included the partition because it is a true, tried, tested penetrating round that does great on elk and deer. Really well on deer, really good on elk. It penetrates and has good controlled expansion. And then the AccuBonds, which I didn't include, have much better ballistic efficiency, and they are higher up than these. So I would pick up some AccuBonds over the partitions. I just didn't include them in here because of the history of the partition. Alright, let's go down to hand loadings. My favorite bullet is the ELDX bullet. I love that bullet. It performs very well. This is 162 grain. I didn't include that. Let's take a look here. So let's get rid of this because that doesn't apply. That's to my own personal load. At 500 yards, 2286 feet per second, 1879 foot-pounds of energy, 42. So for going off of the Hornady load data, you are only 19 foot-pounds of energy more and only 12 feet per second more. So you might as well just go pick up a box of this, although you will save money here eventually if you load a lot, because you do have to pay for the equipment. Now if you already have the equipment, then that's another story. You will save money if you could reload your own. Down here, the 7mm-08 doesn't pack quite the punch, but it still does pretty good. Better than anything from the factory. 2030, 1482 foot-pounds, drops 54 inches. You can see how flat this guy shoots. Remington Magnum is a flat shooting gun. That's pretty awesome. The 7mm-08 just doesn't quite have the speed to keep it as flat, but it performs very well. We'll get in some of the efficiencies later on and see how efficient this little case is, but there you go, about 400 foot-pounds less. And this is the calculation of what I used right here. So if you go to the Hornady page and find the ballistic calculator, this is what you're going to get from that. So I entered in all the numbers here. 625 ballistic coefficient, maximum range 500 yards. We're going out 500 yards, 100-yard intervals. According to the load data, it's going 2,700 feet per second. It's 162 grains. And so you can see the breakdown here. Muzzle, 27 feet per second, and 26, 22 foot-pounds of energy, all the way down to there. So with the 7mm-08, you can get the exact same performance as the Remington Magnum gets at 500 yards when you are at 300 yards, which is pretty awesome. I mean, you could easily kill an elk. Well, with any of these are all good enough for killing elk. Now, the interesting thing here is I'm taking this same load data using the RL17, 46 grains, and testing it on mine. Now, I have changed the overall case length, which will change the dynamic of the round. It increases the pressure just slightly, but for me, same amount of powder, I am getting 2815 feet per second to 2850 feet per second. So 115 to 150 feet per second more. This is the ballistics for the 115 feet per second. At 500 yards, we're going 2129, and we have 1,631 foot-pounds of energy. So it's 240 less. Cuts the difference in half almost, and drops 6 inches, 5 inches less. But this is only, down here you can see 13% less power than the hand load. So my bullets are performing 13% less than this, and 12% less than the factory loads available. So you're almost bringing the 7mm-08 up to factory power within 12% of the factory power. Then you're maintaining a lot less powder and a lot less recoil, a lot less wear on your muzzle, on your barrel. So I shoot the Weatherby Vanguard Series 2 with a 24-inch barrel. That's the gun I use. So, all right, let's get down here to some other hand loads. 140 grain partition, Remington Magnum. It is sweet gun. I am going to be picking one up soon because I really like the ballistics of it. Although for plinking, shooting, plastic for competition, practicing, for deer for sure, and I'm not sure for elk. If I get the Remington Magnum, I'll probably use that for elk, but it is sufficient for elk. It's a lot cheaper to reload my 7mm-08, and it kicks a lot less, so I will continue to use that even if I get a 7mm Remington Magnum, at least for practicing and smaller game. But anyway, let's take a look here. I divvied it up by most accurate and max power. Most accurate load, 2,054 feet per second, 1,311 foot-pounds of energy, drops 45 inches. Down here, the most accurate and the max load is the same for the 7mm-08. It's the same powder. 1969, 1205, 49.3 inches. Let's go up to the max load, 2273 feet per second, 1606 foot-pounds. That's pretty fast moving bullet, carries quite a bit of energy with it, but you're looking 67.5 grains powder. This is using 42.1% less powder. That's using almost half as much powder. And if you compare these two, the most accurate, to this one down here, which is the most accurate and the max load, it's only 8% better performance out of the Remington Magnum, but it's using 39% more powder on this guy right here. And now remember, this is the max load. It's not the most accurate. So the most accurate right there, and the most accurate right here. So 8% less is all, but 39% less powder. Pretty amazing there as far as the efficiency goes. For every 25% powder you add, I think it's 4% velocity is what I read. With the bigger cases, when they're using smaller projectiles, they really burn up a lot of powder, really inefficient. Now when you get to the bigger projectiles with the bigger cases, then your efficiency gets a little bit better. As you'll see as we go down, the efficiency difference will change a little bit. Here's the 150 grain partition, 500 yards, 2,087 feet per second, 1450. Down here, 1849, 1139, so a few hundred pounds less. It's going to be basically the same all the way through. I mean, a few hundred foot-pounds less. The efficiency is going to be the big thing. So if you're reloading yourself, you're going to save some money going with that. You will have less power, of course. That goes with it, but you're also going to have less barrel wear, a lot less recoil, and it's going to stretch your wallet even farther because you won't be. I mean, you're using 41% less powder right here on this most accurate load. 41% less powder, 27.3% less powder here. And this isn't the exact comparison because it is different types of powders. Now we do use this IMR 43 down here in another comparison, and we're getting that in just a second. But you're going to be a few hundred foot-pounds less, and your drop's going to be more significant. 31 inches, you're 13 inches more drop, which you can make up for. Again, Remington Magnum is a pretty awesome gun. There's a reason why it's the most popular hunting gun in North America right now, and has been for the last 15-20 years. Let's move to the 160 grain. I have three options here. This one is using the same powder because it has it for both. But let's go most accurate for the Remington Magnum. 2005 feet per second, 1428, drops 49.6 inches. Now down here, this is a very conservative load, only 39 grains of RL15, 1756, 1095. Now if you compare that, it's 36.1% less powder, 23% less performance. So still a more efficient round. Middle one, this is the same powder. This is actually pretty close. I love the performance of the IMR 4350. I like that in my 30-06 when I reloaded that, and I like it in my 7mm-08, and it seems to do pretty good across the board. It's a pretty good powder. But for the Remington Magnum, you're in 2081 feet per second, 1538, drops 45.9. Down here, 1801, 1152, so we're about 400 foot-pounds less and 16 inches more drop. So that's not that great in a performance if you look at those, but it's using 26% less powder, and you're getting almost the same, 25% less performance out of that. Now down to the max load, see when you go to the max loads, that's when you really start losing efficiency with the bigger cartridges, and you can see that here, 2145, 1634, and it's using 72 grains of Mag Pro. Down here we're using 47.5 grains of RL19. It's the Remington Magnum is using 51.6% more powder than the 7MM-08 and 21% more power. So yeah, so the 7mm 51.6 less powder, less than half as much powder used, 21% less performance. And this is why I will keep my 7mm-08 and continue to hand load it, and I'll probably do some competitions and stuff with it. But I do think I want to pick up a Remington Magnum because ballistically it's a pretty awesome gun. And then finally the last one, this 175 grain here, 2128 feet per second, 1760. So this would easily take down any deer, especially with the long-standing history of the partition and its success. 1760 foot-pounds, 62.5 grains of RL22. Down here we have, oh yeah, so this was the max and most efficient for this one. So this is a pretty good load right here. If you're gonna hand load for your Remington Magnum, this would be a pretty awesome load right there. Down here, I mean, this is gonna kick probably 22, 23 pounds of force on your shoulder. So you will feel that, but if you need to take down an animal, that's a pretty awesome round right there. Down here, most accurate, 1727, 1159, drop 69 inches, a significant difference from up here. 600, yeah, it's about 600 foot-pounds difference, and 2 feet drop more over that. But that's the most accurate. If you go to the max load, it's a little bit different. You're a lot closer there, 61 inches, so you drop 8, almost 9 inches less. It has 180 foot-pounds more energy. Now look at the efficiencies, 35.9% less powder, 33.2% less powder, or less power, sorry. So you can see it's pretty similar. The 7mm bullet is a very efficient bullet. That's why in some of these, you can see with the smaller bullets, the gap's a little bit bigger. But as far as when you get into the bigger bullets, the less powder you use almost equals the less performance. And it's like that with the bigger bullets. Now if you're shooting smaller bullets, it's different. You can see quite a bit less in some of these, especially this one up here. But anyway, so that's a quick comparison between these two. Comment below if you have any questions. Let me know what else you want to see. I did have a request for the 2506 versus the 7mm-08. I will do that one next Tuesday and release that for you. But I appreciate you listening, and if you have any questions or comments, please post below. And any suggestions, I'm happy to hear. I didn't mention where I get the data from. I do get it from Hornady, the Nosler. I'm using a percent calculator there, just a basic calculator. Hornady Ballistics, and then Federal's Ballistic Calculator that allows you to do factory and hand load. So that's where I'm getting the data from. And so yeah, I just pull it all together, and I'm just putting it on that spreadsheet for you guys. Anybody can go find that data themselves. Anyway, again, let me know if you have any comments.